Hi, welcome to Race House with me, Jolie.
And me, Darren Reeves.
It's the Chinese Grand Prix 2024. We haven't been back there for 5 years. I cannot believe it. And it's such an impressive place, such an impressive circuit, I think. And we had actually a really fun race. It was really interesting, Darren. What do you think?
Well, mate, I have to say these races are great. We know we're all confident Verstappen's going to disappear into the distance, and nothing was different to that today, even though we are desperate to see a Brit win again. But we've had safety cars. We had the threat of rain, which never came at the start. We had some silly driving, and we had some great driving and loads of different strategies. It's been really entertaining, mate, and this is why people should be tuning into Formula One and not going, oh, did Verstappen win again? Mate, it's right through the field and
Well,
loads to talk about.
spoiler alert,
Oh, yeah.
Verstappen won again. And it's so crazy. It's so dominant. Perez third, but Verstappen, yeah, I mean, supremely dominant again. He was just away after the first 3, 4 laps. He was
Yeah.
off. Boom. See you
Well,
later.
Well, we've seen a couple of dominant sort of drives, and for me, it all started in the early hours of Saturday morning. I got up at 4 a.m. to watch the sprint shootout yesterday, being back in the UK now, and the rain came down, and Lando was 1.3 seconds faster than everybody else in the rain,
Amazing.
and because this odd thing happened, he came round and was going to take pole position for the sprint shootout, whatever you want to call it, sprint qualifying, and his back end went out on the last corner into the gravel, and so he lost his lap time through track limits. So then he goes on to the next lap, and he's faster again and goes to the top of the standings, and then they took away his lap then, because there seems to be a law that if you go wide on the last corner of a track, you then get a different line into the start finish straight, which then gives you an advantage into the next lap. I didn't even know this, Joe.
Oh, like a
Yeah,
slingshot effect.
correct. But McLaren then challenged it because it would have given Hamilton the pole position. But they challenged it because it's gravel on the exit to the last corner in Shanghai, as we saw with Stroll yesterday. Sorry, not Stroll. Sainz
Alonso,
in
was it?
qualifying. He went. No, well, that was in the race, but in qualifying,
Today, yeah.
Sainz went out and span it yesterday in qualifying, but didn't damage his car. Got out and managed to qualify top 10. But yeah, so they reinstated Lando's qualifying time for the sprint. God, you've got to get it right, haven't you? It's so long ago now. So much has happened. And
So much.
I thought that was fascinating because he didn't get that slingshot effect. And McLaren were right. Lando started on pole, Hamilton on second. How brilliant was that to see two Brits on the front row of it? I know it was the sprint, but for me, I'm like, here we go. This is fantastic. And
Yeah.
it was
Well,
in
and
the
see
wet. So,
Hamilton back up the top. I mean, like, that was the
yes.
biggest story for
Yes.
me. I mean, like,
Where
suddenly,
did
where's he come out the
where did
woodwork?
that come from? But I do
Yeah.
think it was to do with the wet weather and the fact that we only have 1 hour of FP1 on these sprint weekends, and there was no rain, so they literally had no data from any of these car setups because of the
Mm.
regulation changes in 2022. So everything dates back to 2019 and before for any data. So it's just so far back that they just had nothing, and it
Mm.
creates chaos, and that is what's going to make Formula One interesting moving forward.
Yeah.
All the time we've got this dominance of Red Bull. We need chaos. We need uncertainty. We need unpredictability, because
Yeah.
what we see with predictability is a Red Bull 1-2. However,
Mm.
we did not see that this weekend. But Lando had a terrible start at the beginning of the sprint. He went out wide in turn 2 and dropped back to 6th or 7th. In the end, just looking at it, he finished 6th. But I've got a slight issue with the way the points work for the sprint race. And that
Go
is,
on.
we've got 5 top teams right now and 5. So we've got Red Bull out front. We've then got 4 teams fighting for that second position in McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Aston Martin. And then we've got these other 5 teams fighting for the other places. But if you're with the sprint, it's the top 8 that score 8 points, 8 down to 1 for 8th. And again, we see it in the sprint that it's those top 5 teams that take away those top 8 places. And ninth was Guan Yu Zhou, the Chinese driver, got nothing for that 9th place in the sprint. And I thought, and Haas, Magnussen got 10th. They got nothing for it, you know. And I was just disappointed in the fact that Aston Martin finished 14th and last in the sprint. They had a terrible sprint race and that gives opportunity for these other teams. But there's nothing for it. So I felt sorry for Guan Yu Zhou with that good drive in the sprint. So that summarises the sprint. But a brilliant second place for Lewis Hamilton to split the Red Bulls. Yeah, split the Red Bulls and 2 Ferraris behind them. You know, Ferraris are looking a solid, strong second stroke third team right now.
Yeah, and with Mercedes, it's a shame they couldn't, repeat that success for race day. I mean, Hamilton, well, his qualifying was pretty dire, wasn't it?
Yes.
I don't know what happened. And he started 19th.
It can only be set up on the car and then just a poor lap in Q3. I can't remember if he had one deleted or not, but again, it's just lack of setup time, and I think just a result of not enough data compared to a normal race weekend. Unlucky.
He did well. I think he started 19th. He finished 9th. In the end, Russell 6th. I can't remember where he started. But we had quite a few DNFs today.
Yes.
We had, Bottas. He was probably kicking himself for kick Sauber. But I'll go to Daniel Ricciardo and Tsunoda. Now, Ricciardo actually out-qualified Tsunoda, and I think he must have been very happy about that. And but then 2 DNFs for the end of the race. What a very strange one where he basically got rear-ended, didn't he? And then basically that was
by my favourite driver.
Is he your favourite driver?
Stroll.
You went for a little Stroll.
He certainly did.
No.
But he it was the restart of the safety car going into the hairpin, and that they all try and out-predict each other as to when people are going to go. But ultimately, you're responsible for what's in front of you. And he could have gone out to the right and been clean, but he didn't. He just drove straight into the back of Danny Rick, who then basically nearly took out Piastri.
Well, yeah, and I think it really started with Alonso, because I think he had the lockup first in that kind of train of cars. But each driver responded. These guys are quick reaction times.
Oh, yeah.
So you had quite a few cars there responding to that. But Stroll obviously wasn't paying attention. And I think that's what happened. And he went straight into the back room and lifted him up. It made the highlights reel in the pre-podium room. Stroll. Again, we'll come on to Alonso. Fantastic race. Stroll really was not having a great race. No. And look at Alpine as well. They were just like, were they even there? Again, 0 points for both guys, 0 points for the team. This is dire. How can these teams survive this? This is unbelievable.
Well, they're scrapping for 10th place, 1 or 2 points, 9th and 10th for any race. And we've got after 5 races we've had now where Red Bull have taken all the big points and Ferrari. We're seeing McLaren and Mercedes and Aston Martin fight out those other 3 places, but Haas are the ones for me out of those bottom 5 teams who were bottom of the bottom last season. We all love Günther Steiner and gutted to see him lose his job at Haas, but actually I think they're doing the best job with a really good driver lineup. And
look at Hulkenberg. He got a point away today.
Yep.
They'd be happy with that. They're nicking points. 1 or 2. I don't know what the standings look like, but it's very impressive.
Well, it is, and that's for me a whole nother race to watch. and Magnussen finished 16th today, so that was poor, especially to finish behind Lance Stroll, who just had a terrible race. But
Yeah.
but Williams as well, Albon is clearly the number one driver. We saw that when Logan got kicked out in Australia. But
Mm.
Logan finished last again today. How long? Like, he's in there being American. We're off to Miami in 2 weeks' time. Well, we're not, Joe, but the Formula One circus is, and I
Mm.
wish we were. He's in there because he's American. It's the merchandise, it's the presence, it's 3 races there. But he's coming last every single race, every single qualifying.
Yeah.
How long can this go on? We
It's
don't talk
yeah.
about Logan much. He's a nice guy. He seems really unassuming. In fact, both Williams drivers are very nice, just nice guys. That isn't what you need to be to win
No.
races and win. Yeah, I don't know what to say about him. I don't know enough about him, really.
No, I don't. I mean, look, you had all this stuff when he basically sacrificed his car to give to Alex Albon, at the other race, and obviously that's team orders. I don't think it's down to him to kind of resist that. I don't think he could resist that. But
No, he couldn't do anything.
I think with these teams, they are scrapping for, as you said, 9th, 10th place. Haas are doing well. Hulkenberg, I checked, he's got 4 points this season so far,
Yeah.
which is incredible. If you think that the Kick Sauber or the Alpines have yet to score any points, and I don't think Ricardo's got any points either.
No,
I mean,
look,
Oliver Behrman's got more points
Yes.
than all the bottom
Sitting
lot combined.
Correct. And that just shows you the
hilarious.
gulf between. We're almost getting to a point where we've got a Premier League and a Championship.
Yeah.
It's going
Yeah.
like the foot, and you sort of think to yourself, my word, we're almost looking at 2 separate races here, and the idea of the regulations in 2022 and the cost capping and everything else was meant to bring things closer together. But they've got to react. They've got to react to this, in my mind, because we're literally got 2 leagues.
It is. It does. It really does feel like that. Yeah. And when you see some of these teams like Aston Martin and they're finishing the bottom 10, you're like, well, okay, that's very strange. That's really different. I mean, I heard Crofty on Sky Sports F1 comment that he would love to see more point distribution down the table. And for it not to stop at 10th, but maybe to go down. Well, he didn't say a figure, but it could go down to 13 or 15, because you do see these battles at the back. I'm going to copyright that because that sounds great. Battles at the back. It's a new podcast. Or maybe just get a graphic up at one point. Battles at the back. And
Oh, Joe, you got it. You got the
hey,
fireworks.
got it in the
Behind you.
bag.
That's amazing.
But those battles at the back are really interesting because again they are fighting for that point. But if you had some more points to spare for maybe down to 13th, you'd get a bit more of that because you could really fight for it. But does that mean that teams are going to settle for 13th place? That's it's okay. We get a point. We'll take 13th place.
Well, it just means that you get more rewarded for where you finish. At the moment, Sargent can finish last and be just as well rewarded as Ricardo or Albon finishing 11th.
11th.
So
It's true.
So now, where I can sort of bring some experience into this is my world of watching my son do the karting. Now, the way the point system works in that, they have 1 point system for the race weekend. So whether you do qualifying and then split the final into 3 set, whatever they call them, heats, or whether they do random grid orders and you take your average, but you get points all the way. So if you've got 40 karts, the winner will get 40 points and the last kart will get 1 point. Okay, you've then got some karts that are there just for fun, and you've got some karts that are there as part of the championship. So then there might only be 25 of the karts that are entered in the championship. So then the winner would get 25 points in the championship down to who, you know what I mean? So it's you have to. It all depends on how many races you enter and so on. But it's done so fairly, but the last place person still gets 1 point. But what it does is it just makes the table right the way across the board from first to last representative of the work you put in. And it just creates something to fight for 13th and 14th, let alone 11th and 12th. So my honest opinion is why don't you just bring in that? Maybe the last place gets 0, maybe,
Sure.
but there's a definite thing to be said, and it's proven and it works brilliantly because it means it's fair for everybody, and there's something to fight for. Even so, you go if you're in last and you want to get 19th, you're going to fight for it on the last lap.
It's
So it,
such a good idea because what I never thought of that. If you come 20th or 11th, it's the same, but you could have fought your heart out to get to 11th
yeah,
and you still don't get rewarded.
and it's not
And
your
it could be the
fault.
same
It's
as yeah, it's true. It's the same as a DNF. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, so I think maybe there is something there that they could look at that could shake things up a little bit. But points equal money,
yes,
so there's a money distribution factor here as well. So you'd have to take some points off the top podium,
yeah,
I'd say, and
of
then
course,
distribute them down. Maybe 1 point each down the bottom or something, 10 to 13. But I think it's a really interesting concept.
yeah,
And yeah, the battle at the backs, we'll be watching those. And because of the Red Bull dominance, you see more interesting action at the back, you know. We saw Lewis Hamilton go from 19th all the way up to 9th. We've seen people dipping out of the points. I really think that's a really interesting idea, and that will keep it exciting. So we should
yeah.
send an email to the FIA and say, let's have some points further down the table, please, in
Yeah,
further seasons.
I
And
think it's a good thing to be discussed, and they're going to get together and talk about it on a Zoom call, I think, over the next couple of weeks. For me, you just mentioned it about Lewis. Qualified terribly, started 18th, made his way up to 9th, is where he finished, wasn't it? So
yeah,
he made up 9 places. You could arguably say that's a better drive than Verstappen starting first and finishing first.
well,
Verstappen just
yes,
drove around the track. And in karting again, that is rewarded because they do random grid orders, and you're actually judged on how many places you make up or lose over a period of time. So for Hamilton, that would have been a massive, massive, point scoring thing to make up those places.
I think it's an amazing
So
point scoring opportunity.
yeah,
Yeah. Let's look
yeah.
at Alonso, his drive, this race.
Well,
I thought I don't think he was driver of the day. That was Lando, and well deserved to Lando. But Alonso, I thought he had a great run.
well,
Let's slip back a back.
he qualified in third. Am I right in saying that? Just to double check. Yeah, he
I think
qualified
so.
in third. So that's the first thing. But we know he's not in the second best team. We know Aston Martin right now are fighting with Mercedes to become fourth best team. That's where they're at right now. So brilliant qualifying by Fernando in a car that we're watching Stroll drive as well. So, so I would say he couldn't get driver of the day because the strategy wasn't strategy of the day. To basically come in on his pit stop during the safety car and put on softs when everybody else came in and put on hards to get to the end of the race.
Mm.
And then once we'd had the safety cars, he didn't really make that much ground. He got up to Sainz, didn't he? So was he? I think he was running just in fifth on the softs, but we all knew he had to come in and he had to try and get back out and then make up those places. But I think he came out in 12th or something and
Yeah, I think
tried
so.
to make his way back up to 5th to make the strategy work. But what some laps he put in were after that last pit stop.
Unbelievable.
Fastest lap. He was
Fastest lap.
3 seconds faster than anyone else on the track around him. I'm not sure how he was compared to Max, but around him, which included the Ferraris and the Mercedes and Piastri's McLaren at least. 3
Well,
seconds a lap faster.
they were commentating and said, "Oh, Alonso might take on Piastri." They cut to the next camera shot. They go, "Oh no, he's taking Piastri. He's
Yeah.
now in 7th." He was tearing up. If he had some more laps, I mean, he could really do some damage. I think he
It
could have
all
really
depended on the tyre
climbed back up.
degradation, really, on his car.
Mm.
And the only thing I know at the moment is Piastri had quite bad degradation on his rear tyres, but Lando had no degradation at all on his last set of tyres. So
Why
he
do you think that
really looked
is?
after because he
Cleaner
had no-
drive.
Correct. Well, I think he's a smoother driver, maybe, but he wasn't battling with people. Piastri was battling back
Yeah.
in those sort of 8th, 9th, 10th positions. So you're always got dirty air, and that is going to cause cut tyres. But basically, Lando had Verstappen 10 seconds in front of him, Perez 6 seconds behind him. What an amazing drive to be 6 seconds ahead of the second Red
Unbelievable.
Bull. You know, arguments to say put Lando in the other Red Bull. You know, let's make Formula One interesting again.
There is a real argument for that. Yeah, I mean, well, we won't get into all that transfer nonsense. We'll be all night.
We will.
But,
We will.
Yeah,
But what will be interesting, mate, is that McLaren are bringing some upgrades to Miami. And you know
that's
what?
news, right?
Yep. And if they're going to bring some upgrade what we've seen with Norris beating Perez today on clear pace, you know, because the strategies weren't that different. It was clear pace. We've got something happening here, I think, with this McLaren. And
that is really
Piastri
cool
had
hear.
a damaged diffuser, didn't he, after the whole Ricardo Stroll Bosch. So
Yeah.
and dirty air. So he was stuck. So it just shows you how important qualifying is.
Yeah, and Ferrari were kind of a bit anonymous, I felt, in this
Yeah.
race. You know, I think they did okay with their points. Where did they come?
Well, they
Didn't know.
finished fourth and
sixth?
fifth, so they scored a solid
Ah.
22 points between them. But what was interesting this weekend was they had a little bit of argy-bargy, the two of them, because they're really close in driving, and with Sainz driving his socks off so far this season in the races that he's raced in, and finished on the podium in all three of them until today. You know, Leclerc, you know, he's got that drive for next year with Lewis, but he's got to prove himself really this season against Sainz. And my mate Fred took them in for a briefing for the briefing this morning and said, "Look, guys, you can't race each other. You've got to keep it clean." And on lap 1, Leclerc pushed Sainz out on turn 2. Yeah. And you're just like, hold on a minute, what's going on there? So there's clearly something going on in that Ferrari drive, with Sainz driving for his career and Leclerc driving for his status, really. You know, because he's been number one driver in that team for the last few years. You know, and since Vettel left, really. And
Well,
what's his
how's that gonna
what
be?
is his status next season? You know, 7 times,
Yeah.
possibly 8, 7 times world champion against, you know, the rookie that is Leclerc.
Well, it's definitely going to be Lewis's number one drive. I mean, Lewis would not
got
go
to be.
over to be a second driver. But what you might see is actually more of this, more battling between the teammates.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what we're going to see next year. More like a Lewis Rosberg situation.
Yes.
I think it was that. And it was good to hear Nico Rosberg in the commentary as well. That was a quite refreshing change as Sky Sports F1 mix it all up. Yeah, look, I keep looking and fast forwarding, but listen, the standings, Leclerc is third at the moment in the championship, and Sainz is fourth. But Lando is creeping up behind him in fifth. So if he has a really good go in Miami, he could get some serious points here, and maybe even challenge Charles to get up to. I think the maths works out. He could get to second.
18. He's
third
18
place.
points. Yeah, he's 18 points behind Charles. But the Ferrari has definitely been the second best car over this season so far. But we're going to start seeing these upgrades happen and things changing. And we've seen what McLaren did last year, from finishing 17th and 18th, second worst team at this stage of last season, to we saw it on Drive to Survive, to turning up at Silverstone last year and Lando finishing second. They've got it in them now to take this to the next level. Whereas Mercedes and Ferrari have been trying for years and years and years, and ever since the Abu Dhabi Michael Massey Gate 2021. Mercedes, have just been on a backward trajectory. And Toto Wolff, how long can this go on, Toto? You know, it's getting worse and worse.
Yeah, it's getting worse and worse. And to say that they're fighting to be the fifth best team, I mean, it has just gone horribly wrong so far. You know, their star driver is leaving. You know, the cars just aren't fast. I mean, George put in, you know, he was again a bit anonymous this race, I felt, but yeah, he got some points. I think he finished 6th. He finished.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, there's not much excitement there. Everyone's talking about the seat. Who's going into that seat? I think Liam Lawson should just go and have a chair, but he's a Red Bull
Well,
guy.
they did show Liam Lawson on the footage today, sat on the pit wall at RB. we talked about Danny Rick. Again, no luck today whatsoever. And we said last podcast that Danny Rick, it needs to happen now. You need
Yeah.
to be getting some
Mm.
points finishes in 9th or 10th. Well, that's probably what's on offer.
Mm.
Time's running out, mate. Time is
Time's running
for
out, and
Danny Rick.
Liam's there watching the
He's there
screens,
waiting.
biding his
Yep.
time, and that's what it's about,
Yep.
and waiting.
is.
I mean, it was an interesting race as well because we had lots of restarts and safety cars. We had virtual safety cars as well, and actual safety cars. It meant that certainly Max and a lot of the drivers could make use of that advantage of pit stop. Apart from Gasly, it would seem, who had a nightmare pit stop. Was it 19.5 seconds? Which was crazy.
Well,
Whereas Max had a 1.9, which
So yes,
check the milliseconds.
yes. Well, yeah, we will. McLaren obviously hold the fastest lap time of 1.8 from last season, but Gasly, I think, didn't they have a problem where he pulled away early and the tyre rear
ran
right
over his
tyre
mechanic.
wasn't on?
Yeah.
Basically, it could have been, but he did stop quickly, which meant the
He
mechanic
did.
was only a little bit battered and bruised. It could have been a lot worse than what it was. So we really hope that he makes a full recovery, mate, and or it's a simple one, a quick recovery. But it shows you how dangerous it is. Now, we did see a number of pit stops happen all at the same time, and there were some really close unsafe releases or coming in and whatever. And there's cameramen there without any safety gear on, really close. Something's going to happen at some point. I think the pit lane isn't as safe as it needs to be right now because everybody's going for the fastest, which is Formula One, of course. But we're at that point now where something's going to happen at some point, and I think that needs to be considered. Somebody's going to get hurt quite seriously. We saw Max Verstappen's dad's car go up in flames with refueling back in '94. They took away refueling. I don't know what they can do, but when we watch IndyCar, they all take like 20 seconds to do the pit stop, and nobody's got any safety gear. But it's really sensible, and you have this window where you have to do it in a certain time. Are we going to get to that point where a pit stop must take 5 seconds? Whether you know what I mean?
I don't see it.
I don't know.
I don't see it happening because the thing is with F1, it's all about progress and performance improvement the whole time and efficiency, and how could you squeeze the best and the fastest and just a little bit more and push it a little bit more, and that's what F1's about, and the engineering side certainly. So I mean, in the future you'll see a 1 second pit stop, which we can't imagine how they will do that, but it will exist because
I'm starting to wonder whether it would be automated.
Well, yeah, so it could be automated. It could be robots. That's how you get rid of the human safety factor. And maybe there'd be less to go wrong. I mean, it could be, AI. Could be some AI pit
Joe,
stop machine.
what are we talking about? Where has this gone?
But this is, so like Terminator, future for F1. But it could do because, it could be so fast, half a second even, and then they're out again. Who knows where it's going to go, but I don't know. That was very slow. Coming back to Gasly, very slow. Those releases are obviously critical because you don't want to lose a place in the pit lane, and you want to make sure you get out unscathed because you've just had a pit stop. You might have had a new wing put on or something. You don't want to mess it up before you've even got back on the track. So it's always an exciting part, and we know it. We've been to plenty of races over the years, and looking over the balcony and above the car, and off.
It's one of my favourite things to do, mate. We've been so really lucky to have done that a number of times, and it's one of the main shots on Drive to Survive, isn't it? They always use that shot, and we've stood exactly next to those cameras whilst they're filming it. If anybody ever gets a chance to do Paddock Club and go and watch the pit stops from above,
cameras. Is that if
honestly, mate, it's a privilege to go and just watch that happen in front of your eyes. Yeah,
and it's a privilege to comment on this, and also a privilege for you guys commenting and watching and posting things. I have a shout out for a friend I bumped into yesterday. I haven't seen him for many a year, Jack. And Jack said, "Oh, Joe, how you doing? I haven't seen you." He said, "Oh, how you doing?" Because I love the podcast. I was like, "That's how you know me now." I goes, "Oh yeah, love Race House and you and Darren, and I love it and everything." He says, "Oh, please keep doing that." I said, "Well, certainly." Give a big shout out to Jack. Thanks for subscribing and watching the podcast, and I'll make sure you know that you've got your shout out today. And what about you, Darren? Have you got a shout out at all?
No, I've got no shout outs, mate. I've just come out of the tour bubble, travelling all around Europe, and I'll be honest with you, today's the first day I actually feel like I'm human again. So I've kept myself to myself. But do you know what? I've sat and watched the Formula One with my boys today, and my wife, who's properly into it as well, which is great. She's been to a few races. Went to Melbourne 2004. Was one of our first dates we ever had. So watched it with the family. It was really lovely, mate, in my living room, and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Just if you missed that, Darren said one of his first dates with a girl was to the Australian Grand Prix. So if you're out there dating, if you're out there dating, then that's the level you've got to get to get someone like his wife, who's a lovely lady. But I don't know if can you see the comments here, Darren? Can you see the comments coming in?
I can't see any comments, mate. Go on, tell me.
We'll have to try and change that. But we've had a hi from Lucas, who is watching.
Good. Well, Lucas, we've talked about karting again today. So he's got a radio interview this week. So he's busy, making his way to become the Formula One driver to take over from Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. That's the plan.
It's fantastic.
Because we're going to see Lance there for a long time, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when we buy the team out, when we buy Aston Martin, then Lucas has got a sure footed. It's been super fun. Thanks for watching our review for the Chinese Grand Prix. Next time it's Miami. Always a fun one. We can't wait to see that. And will we still see the Red Bull dominance? We'll have to wait and see. But for now, it's goodbye from me, Joe Lee.
And it's goodbye from me, Darren Reeves. Take care.
Take care.